We have a very special guest with us tonight, and she has a few things to say about the state of our nation and, of course, how it treats the telling of history, American history, the real American history. Now, in case you've been living under a rock, Republican governors like Ron DeSantis in Florida, Greg Abbott in Texas, and Sarah Huckabee in Arkansas have all made it clear that anything that could be labeled as critical race theory, whatever that is to them, will be banned from being taught in public schools. North and South Carolina, along with Indiana and Missouri, are considering bills that would do the same thing. And this attack is not just limited to what can be taught in a history class or a social studies curriculum. Nah, Ron DeSantis took it as far as banning an advanced placement African American studies course from high schools in the state. The course was developed over the course of many years, and it was developed not by some random ideological extremist. It wasn't created by grassroots activists, although all those things would be dope. It was created by the College Board. And as a response to DeSantis' ban, the College Board, they acquiesced. They removed or reduced the presence of concepts like intersectionality, mass incarceration, reparations, and the Black Lives Matter movement. Joining me now is the author of the 1619 Project, which is also banned from Florida schools, the Nikole Hannah-Jones. And in case you've been living under that rock, 1619 Project highlights black contributions to this country and the legacy of slavery that remains within it.
They say our people were born on the water. The very first of us arrived over 400 years ago. Virtually no aspect of our country has been untouched by the centuries of slavery that followed. This is the 1619 Project.
Joining me, Nikole, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
Every time I talk to you, I feel like things get crazier and crazier and crazier. Banning an AP curriculum, taking stuff out like intersectionality, what's happening?
I mean, what's happening is that this is going to one of the oldest plays in the political playbook in America, which is to stoke racial division for political gain. We know that the AP Advanced Placement course was created with renowned scholars such as Henry Louis Gates, who have expertise in the area, that the state of Florida is offering several advanced placement courses that seemingly there's no problem with, that the problem is teaching about the Black American experience in a realistic way. And that's because the Black American experience is very problematic to the narratives of American exceptionalism. So we know this isn't about what's actually being taught. It's about political gamesmanship. And unfortunately, it is sending a message, though, that is very real to Black children in that state, and really to all children in that state, that Black history is illegitimate.
Wow, that's scary business. For me, it's scary on multiple levels, but one is the legislative piece of this. It's not just that people are resisting bad ideas in their estimation. We saw that in the 80s and in the 90s. We had the culture wars. We had the canon wars. We had people like Skip Gates, Henry Louis Gates, and people like Malefi Asante being waged war against by people like Mary Lefkowitz and people like Dinesh D'Souza. And we've seen all of it. But now they trying to not just make it undesirable, they making it illegal. You know, in Florida, they have something called the Stop Woke Act. When I see legislation that is designed to prevent race talk, to prevent an analysis of oppression and inequality and injustice, that tells me that they've raised the stakes and made it even more dangerous.
Well, yes. I mean, that is why this is dangerous. It's extremely anti-democratic for people to use the levers of the state to prohibit and make illegal the teaching and discussion of ideas simply because they don't like them. When you had the textbook wars before, these are people who were arguing and debating what they thought should be taught. And that's a normal part. I won't call those textbook wars normal, but that is a part of American discourse, is that we can have different ideas, and we can debate whether we agree with those ideas or not. But what's happening now is censorship. It is state-sponsored censorship, and it's having real consequences. Teachers are being forced to remove books from their library shelves. And by the way, in schools that are teaching large numbers of students who are struggling with basic literacy. So we are removing books that are reflective of the experiences of children. When children need more access to books, not less. There was a Florida teacher the other day who was showing how they've now been told that children can't even bring their own books from home into the classroom. We see libraries losing their books. So this is dangerous. This is more than just, grandstanding. It is literally removing the histories and stories of Black children, specifically of LGBTQ children, of other marginalized groups, from the actual lexicon of the classroom. And I just was seeing that books on Harriet Tubman are being removed. So it is an attempt to whitewash our history, to memory hole our history. And it is dangerous because we also know in a place like Florida, Ron DeSantis and the Republican legislature heavily gerrymandered the state to dilute Black political power. We know that there have been a election police force that has been arresting people for voting, what they're saying, voting illegally. So all of these policies go hand in hand.
You know, the Stop Woke Act, I was reading it again, and there's some things here that really scares me, to be quite honest. By the way, for y'all, the Stop Woke Act stands for wrong to our kids and employees. They made up any words just to be able to say woke in a sentence, and it prohibits teachings that were that say that members of one race, color, national origin, or sex are morally superior to members of another race, color, national origin, or sex. It also says a person by virtue of his or her race, color, national origin, or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. I'm going to read one more for you, because there's a whole bunch, but I'm going to just read one more for you. A person's moral character or status as either privileged or oppressed is necessarily determined by their race, color, national origin, or sex. So we can't talk about oppression. We can't talk about racism. We can't say that anyone has privilege. You know, if I had read this bill in a vacuum, or if I had read this bill 10 years ago, I said maybe some Democrats are trying to put forward a bill so that racism doesn't circulate in the classroom. They're trying to stop white oppression from hurting Black kids or brown kids in the classroom. It's facially neutral, but it seems like this is being used to stop white people from being uncomfortable. This whole legislation is about making white people comfortable.
Well, I mean, this has been the tactic of conservatives since the end of the civil rights movement. As soon as it became illegal to use race to discriminate against Black people and other people of color, then they began to adopt the language of the civil rights movement to prevent you from being able to actually address the results of a specific policy that had existed for 350 years. So suddenly now we have to believe in a color. Now we cannot address race, even if it is to help people who have been harmed by race-specific policies. So yes, the law is obviously race neutral, but one, it's very clear if you look at the language that the law is trying to address something that wasn't in the first place. And it's so vague that it allows them to, well, this book on Harriet Tubman paints white people as the enslavers, so therefore it violates the anti-law. Right, because you didn't have educators who were teaching little white children that because they're white, they're the oppressor. Obviously, that wasn't happening. But you can't talk about slavery without pointing out which racial group was enslaving the racial group. You can't talk about the really violent history of racial pride without saying that these laws gave and privileged white Americans over Black Americans. So what this law then does is it does not allow you to teach the actual history and facts of what happened in our country. And of course, that's the intent, is to be so vague as that anyone can enforce these laws however they want to. And any text that even deals with race or racism can be targeted and challenged or removed from the classroom.
That is the goal. It is a sneaky plan, And it would seem ridiculous if it wasn't working. I don't know, man. We're going to take a break, come back. We got more to talk about. Everybody, stay right with me, because on the other side, we want to talk more about the work that Nikole Hannah-Jones is doing, and we want to talk about what's going on in the next 2 years in the state of Black America, Black ideas, and Black history. Welcome back to theGrio with Marc Lamont Hill. We've been hanging out with Nikole Hannah-Jones, getting some ideas of what to do to fight this new culture war that's taking place. Her body of work, of course, is impeccable. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. She's a reporter for the New York Times. She is someone who has covered racial injustice. She is someone who has put together one of the most brilliant pieces of really critical journalism, bringing together minds from around the country and indeed around the world to help us think about this question of slavery. She is one of the most important voices in the American intellectual and journalistic landscape right now. Nikole, let me ask you this. You know, when you look at the trajectory of your career over the last 5 years, did you have any idea that you would be somebody that Republican governors would be making and legislators would be making laws against? Did you know that there'd be people all around the country wanting to take down your book even if they ain't read it?
No, I mean, I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've written about racial inequality for 20 years, mostly about housing and school segregation. And it wasn't until I did a project about the American past and how we collectively remember who we are as a country that my work became such a target. So, you know, as we've discussed before, I don't think the 1619 Project is radical at all. I don't think the arguments that the project makes, which are based on decades of scholarship, are radical at all. What's radical is that this project existed on the New York Times platform, and that we are in a period of racial backlash to the protests of 2020. And so we are at a place in America, because of this extreme polarization, because of the changing demographics in the country, that have really turned this project into such a cultural touchstone, and something that politicians who have decided they're not going to try to expand their electorate by reaching out to people who reflect America, but instead are going to try to sow division in order to win politically. They have decided that this work is a convenient totem for that work.
Does that become, even at the personal level, frustrating? I know how much energy and time you put into creating this thing. And the goal was to make an intervention. It was for people to read it and engage it, even if they didn't agree with everything, to at least be in conversation with it. And so many people are rejecting the idea of it or trying to create a movement against it without even taking the ideas seriously. There's a way that you've become the boogeyman, and not you personally always, but the book. We have a sitting president at the time making a 1776 commission in response to 1619. I mean, when those things are happening, how do you respond, even at the human level?
Well, I've learned to respond much better to it than I did when it was first happening. I didn't expect to see that level of vitriol against the work and me personally, and I did have an adjustment period. But I really am at a place of zen right now, because one, I know that you don't have some of the most powerful men in America attacking your work if that work is not having impact, if there's not a fear that many, many Americans are engaging with the work and its arguments and are critiquing things like our eroding democracy, the way that capitalism exploits all American workers, the way policing in this country is based off of fear derived from the period of slavery. So I think that at this point, I take it in some ways as an honor that so many of these men, powerful men and women, are that afraid of this. And I know that, yes, there are certain people who will never open the 1619 Project book, who will never watch the 1619 documentary series, who will never engage honestly with its ideals. But I also know that the level of attack are coming because there are many Americans who are. And that's who my work has always been to. I'm not one of those people that is trying to reach people who are not reachable, I can't focus my time on that.
That's a very sort of pragmatic, sober, healthy way of looking at things, being able to control the pieces of it that you can and not allowing yourself to be kind of hostage to the ideas and the reactions of people who don't have good intentions for you anyway. So, Nikole, when you think about where you are, that place of zen that you talked about, and you have the opportunity to reflect not just on what your work has meant, but maybe what you want it to mean moving forward, what's next for you?
Yeah, I really don't know, Mark. I've been working on the 1619 project in its various iterations for the last 4 years. It really has consumed my entire life. It just released final episodes of the 6-part documentary series, the 1619 documentary series on Hulu, and I'm excited that that's in the world. So I'm actually looking forward to within the next few months, having some free time and mental space to figure out what's the next big thing that I want to do.
Is it harder to think about new projects now that you're a New York Times bestseller, 50 million weeks in a row, now that everybody's watching? Like, is there a sense that, like, the next thing, you have to appeal to an audience or anticipate a critical response? And do you think about projects differently now?
It's funny that you asked that. Because I've been talking to my friends about, what am I now exactly? I was a magazine reporter. I was a print reporter for most of my career, and now, I've created with our team this documentary series. I'm an executive producer. I'm apparently on-air talent. So I don't know. It's hard to then think about what is the thing that I want to do, and it's not really about audience, but it's just internal, like what feels big and important enough for me to focus on now. And I think when you're so intensely in the work, it can be hard to again have the mental space to figure out what that is. But I'm not actually sure what that the first time in a really long time.
Now, that's a good problem to have, by the way. When you're in a space where you're like, I could do what I've been doing. I could do new stuff. I have opportunities to direct, to write. You could do a one-woman show on Broadway right now and folk would watch it. I'd be one of them. You know what I mean? Like, you have so many things in front of you that are amazing, and Rich, you deserve all of it. So I want to congratulate you on that, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me. But I can't let you go just yet, because before I let my special guests go, I need to get a little bit more information out of them. So I got a game called This or That I'm going to have you play on the other side of this break. So just hang out for a couple more minutes with me. Everybody stay right here. We got the legendary Nikole Hannah-Jones, and she is going to play This or That and answer the tough questions that America really wants to know. Welcome back to theGrio. We've been hanging out with Nikole Hannah-Jones. We're going to have a little bit of fun, though, right now. Nikole, we got a game called This or That. Now, here's how the game works. It's quite simple. I'm going to say two things. You give me the first answer that pops into your head, and you can't just be like, I'm not answering. You can't say I quit. You can't say it's a tie. I need one or the other, okay? So the first one, Toni Morrison or Alice Walker?
Toni Morrison.
Okay. Second one, Spike Lee or Ava DuVernay?
Oh, Lord, you're trying to get me in trouble. I mean, one of my all-time favorite movie is Malcolm X, so I'm going to go with Spike Lee.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I usually know what people are going to say. That one I wasn't sure what you was going to say. All right. Nikki Giovanni or Maya Angelou?
This is a very unfair game, which actually I don't have to abide by your rules, but, so I'll do it. I'm going to go with Maya.
Okay. And finally, the person to play your favorite auntie in a movie, Angela Bassett or Loretta Devine?
Oh, Loretta Devine. Absolutely.
I was hoping you'd say that. That's a good one as well. Anyway, Nikole, thank you for hanging out with me. Everybody, check out 1619 Project. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon.